On the show today, Kenya's central bank says it's not under pressure to secure new standby credit facility with International Monetary Fund, and dollar shortages drive inflation rates higher in Zimbabwe. Plus, South Africa holds interest rates steady at 6.75%. Hello and welcome to Business Incorporated. I'm Imana Amawe. We begin with the markets we track here on the program, and on the continent, it was a bright Friday for some of the major markets. Egypt ended the week at 0.76%. The JSE strengthened by 0.61% as at intraday, while the Nigerian Stock Exchange was up 0.45% at noon. However, Kenya closed negative on Thursday. And over in the Middle East, most of the markets ended the week on a positive note, except Abu Dhabi, which shed 0.16%. Dubai FM gained 0.65%. Qatar was higher 0.4%. And the Saudi SE added 0.26%. Meantime, European shares were higher on Friday morning as market players turned their attention to progress in Washington and Beijing trade talks. The parliamentary deadlock over the UK Prime Minister Theresa May's Brexit deal continues to rumble on. And so I'm now being joined by my colleague at the Frankfurt Stock Exchange, Daniel Koop. Thank you for joining us on the program, Daniel. Trade negotiations between the United States and China have resumed in Beijing today, and investors seem to see some light at the end of the tunnel. The Asian shares have gone up about 3% as at the last trading day, that's today. How have the markets picked up on that sentiment?
Yeah, hi there, Amanda. I guess maybe it's also the feeling about the weekend. Thank goodness Friday. That's what I was hearing from a trader a little bit earlier. And I guess you can see the curve of the blue chip DAX here in the background. Let's actually have a quick look. We are up here at the moment with 82 points. That's a big win here of about 0.7%. And yes, you mentioned it, we had these very good indications coming from Asia this morning. It seems that this ongoing trade conflict between Washington and Beijing could come to an end. And of course, this has been something that has been keeping traders, not just here in Europe, but also over there in China, extremely busy and has given them quite some headache. I mean, we have to remember, we have been here at the blue chip index DAX, but also at other exchanges here around Europe for weeks in the red because of this situation. And it seems that the tone between the two countries has also changed a little bit lately. We got a statement from U.S. authorities after the talks that were taking place yesterday that it really seems to be the case that also China is in the mode of understanding how important it is, you know, to get this deal and to get at the end an agreement. And as a result, as I said, you see the curve in the background. Traders here have appreciated this latest development, and because of that, we are seeing this big plus here right before the weekend.
Okay, aside from China, Uber's competitor Lyft has an IPO which investors are eyeing at the moment. Why is this news so interesting to the market?
Yeah, it's extremely interesting because companies like Uber, Lyft, Grab, they are making, on the one hand, quite some success. And I mean, when we talk, for example, about Germany, but also of the United States, I mean, more and more people there you know, try to live in big cities, and operating a car, even owning a car, is getting more and more expensive. And because of that, Uber and Lyft, these companies are quite successful. So we are learning that the IPO of Lyft is very interesting for investors, a little bit risky also, but I'll talk about that in a second. The company has a valuation that is estimated to be at a level of about 25 billion US dollars. And it is a little bit risky because the company is at the moment not yet in the winning zone. Indeed, they were in the losses. They made 911 million US dollars losses just last year. So the big question is how fast they will be able, you know, to get into the winning zone. So that's why investors on the one hand say it's risky, but in general, a company like that for the market is extremely interesting.
Okay, Daniel, so now tell us, with another Brexit vote and the trade talks on tap as it is as we speak. What other interesting news can we expect in the coming week from the markets?
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, we'll see how those trade talks will unfold between Washington and Beijing. And then, of course, the other question, what at the end is now going to happen with Brexit? I mean, today is March 29th. Today is the date that the United Kingdom was actually set to leave the European Union. We know that that's not the case. So those talks are going to continue. Let's see how this vote also is going to unfold this afternoon in Houses of Parliament there in Westminster. But also, we are getting some very interesting data next week. We are going to learn more about the inflation rate here in the Eurozone by the European Statistics Office. That's taking place next week on Monday. Of course, the inflation rate also is very important here, for example, for the European Central Bank, because by that they usually decide, what's going to happen with the monetary policy here in the Eurozone. Also, we're getting news from the Japanese Central Bank. They are also are going to publish their latest numbers about how the Japanese economy is doing. And also interesting, when we talk about the car sector next week, we will learn how many new cars have been registered in the Eurozone. So lots to talk about. My colleagues will be there and will be unfolding all of this with you. Back to you in Lagos.
Oh, thank you, Daniel. So do enjoy the rest of your Friday. Away from the European markets, most major Asian markets closed higher on Friday afternoon as the hopes rise on reported progress in the trade negotiations between Washington and Beijing. The Shanghai Composite jumped 3.2% and Shenzhen Component surged 3.77%. Meanwhile, Hong Kong's Hang Seng Index was 0.94% higher by the afternoon. And elsewhere in Asia, the Nikkei 225 in Japan rose 0.82% as shares of index heavyweight SoftBank Group jumped 1.9%, while the Topix index added 0.56%. And in South Korea, the Kospi was 0.59% higher, with the shares of chip maker SK Hynix paring earlier gains to finish 2.63% up. Australia's ASX 200 edged up 0.07%. And over in Wall Street, stock index futures were slightly higher earlier in the morning amid renewed optimism on the progress of trade talks between Washington and Beijing. At about 7 a.m. Eastern Time, the Dow Jones Industrial Average futures rose 107 points, indicating a gain of more than 114 points. Futures on the S&P 500 and NASDAQ 100 were also up as well. The world's two largest economies have imposed tariffs on billions of dollars worth of one another's goods over the past year, and this has affected the financial markets and caused consumer and business sentiment to be threatened.